Hello YouTube, my name is Nicholas Montez and you're watching my YouTube channel, The Teenage Movie Critic, and welcome back to the YouTube channel, everybody. And in today's video, we are doing a tier list today. Last week, I actually got the chance to go see Elio. Well, not go see, but I bootlegged it. I thought, hey, why not go ahead and re-rank the Pixar movies? So let's go ahead and start doing that, shall we? Alright, so, of course, if you guys know how I do this, we do it all in release order. So we start off with the original Toy Story, and yeah, this is easily an A-tier movie. This is definitely one of my favorite Pixar movies. It's a classic, you know, the characters are all likable. And what's actually kind of fascinating is, I remember rewatching it once last year, and I remember just, like, they don't use the characters in Andy's room as much. And I think that's what makes the sequels so much better, is that they use all the characters more. And with this one, it's more about focusing on Buzz and Woody, and that's why they're so iconic characters. But their characters are very well written. The script is very fun. The movie is very funny. For the first animated, 3D animated film, it's okay, but you can obviously tell there's a lot of improvement that has gone over the last few years. Over the last 20 years or so. No, not even 20 years, 30 years. And then just the idea, this first idea of, like, toys and, like, how they work. It's just really good, so love Toy Story. Alright, now we have A Bug's Life. Now, A Bug's Life is kind of an interesting movie. Because, on one hand, I can say that I appreciate this movie more because, I don't know, every time it's on, I'm like, oh, I want to watch A Bug's Life. I'm fine with that being on. Like, I just enjoy, like, much like Toy Story, this one just developed a world I really enjoyed. And coming out the same year as Ants, this one just easily exceeds, and I don't know if it's because it's, like, the Disney thing, but they created a really interesting world with, like, bugs, and, like, the fact that, like they had this whole, like, bug city or whatever. It was really cool and fascinating. But also the movie's really funny. Like, Pixar has really good humor in their movies, and this is a great addition of it. And it's also pretty dark at times, too, which I kind of like. So it's, like, it's a really solid film from Pixar that I feel like more people need to give a chance, because it's not that bad. And granted, some people probably will get bored by this, but I don't really see how you can. So I'm going to put this one in the C tier. And the only reason for that is because I want to save the B tier for films that are better, which there are films that are better than A Bug's Life, but it's better than most Pixar. Toy Story 2, possibly one of Pixar's best sequels. Now, for a long time, I've given this movie an A-, but I have now upgraded it to an A+, and it's actually going to go in the A tier, above the first Toy Story. And I think the reason for it is because I was trying to think, do I like this movie because I enjoy it more than the first Toy Story, or do I like it because it actually does better things than the first one? And it's actually kind of both, to where I remember when I used to live in an apartment, and me and my family used to live in an apartment, and every time they were gone, me and my sister would pop this movie in the DVD player all the damn time. It was like a blast to just watch this movie on repeat. But also, what the movie does incredibly well, while it's fun and entertaining, has more jokes, you get to learn more about Woody and what kind of stuff did he come from. You also get to expand more on the Buzz Lightyear stuff, where you kind of get this utility belt Buzz, plus thinking he's a space ranger and having just the fun of that. But you also have this character of Jessie, who doesn't want Woody to go back to Andy, because she knows that when kids grow up, they're gonna forget about you. They're gonna leave. They're gonna move on. They're gonna forget about you and sell you to somewhere. And to be honest, that is a very sad story. That is, like, it makes you kind of care about your toys a little bit more. It makes you, like, a little bit wholesome a little bit. I don't know. This movie is just so, it's kind of emotional when you think about it. And that's just the heart of Pixar. It's like, if anything can make you emotional or cry or tear up, Pixar movies are the ones that really do it best. So, Toy Story 2, easily, it's fun, it's awesome, and it's emotional. So, awesome Pixar movie. We then have Monsters, Inc., and I'm not crazy about this one like everyone else. It's a great movie. I will admit that. But it's not like one of my favorites. It's definitely a very entertaining one. I like Mike and Sully. Billy Crystal and John Goodman are great in these roles. You know, the score in the beginning is very fun. And it does kind of make you think about the workplace of how, you know, like snack brands, you know, it's not selling as well, so we need to do things behind people's back so that way we could sell more and get more money. And that leads to torturing people. And except this one, we're scaring isn't really doing enough, so we have to steal little kids' screams. So that's going to be interesting. So I'm putting this one in the B category. And to be honest, I would actually want to see a story with Boo and Sully. So but that's just me though. We then have Finding Nemo. You already know how this movie's gonna go. It's an easy A-tier movie. Easily my favorite Pixar movie of all time. So I don't feel like my voice keeps sounding weird. I keep getting like these burp signals. I don't know. I don't know. But Finding Nemo, it's honestly like, I love Toy Story, you know. I love Toy Story, and I love some other Pixar films on this list. But with Finding Nemo, there's something so magical about watching this movie that I don't really know how to describe it. That honestly, any other Pixar movie doesn't come close to this. I don't know if it's because of like the visuals and the characters. This movie has some of the best characters. It has some of the best animation in 3D I've ever seen, mainly because of the ocean. And then it's like the story is even another greater aspect of that. And it's mind-blowing of how good the story is. And it's just one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah, Finding Nemo is great. Then we have The Incredibles, which is going to be an interesting one because normally people say this is like the best film of all time, best superhero movie of all time, and possibly best Pixar movie of all time. Honestly, my opinions have this for a long time have been, this is good, but it's not perfect. And it's definitely not amazing. And it's definitely not incredible. But my opinions have actually changed on this very much to where I actually want to put this in the B tier. Now, I can't put this in the A tier because I don't love it like that, but I do think it's a very good movie. And honestly, with Brad Bird's sauce that he has in here, there's a lot of good things in why this film deserves that treatment. Of course, when it comes to the story, now, I have my own opinions on Incredibles 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Hold up, gotta get a drink of water. Anyways, so with Incredibles, I think there is an interesting story that Brad Bird decided to come up with here, to where it is probably the most different superhero movie I've ever seen, to where it's a family of superheroes. And, you know, obviously I've talked about this movie a lot on my channel already, but like, there was something kind of interesting about this film where you have a superhero who gets a family, but superheroes are illegal now. 15 years later, and his superhero days are over because the city decided to make it legal. But then he gets this opportunity to where he wants to be a superhero again. He works out, and one of the things I like about it is, like, throughout the entire film to when it reaches 15 years, I love that when he's a superhero or when he is, you know, being bored and stuff, the entire, like, atmosphere is all colorful when he's a superhero and he's living good, but when he is depressed and he is just down on his luck, it's the whole like vicinity is so gray, and it's something that I don't realize, but also it's incredibly crazy of how dark this movie is, which I find also fascinating. And with the suicide scene, and also the fact that a kid with super speed lets a guy die, which is insane. And of course, all the action sequences in the film are very unique. They're all unique in the animation, in the department. The score from Michael Giacchino is great. And overall, I think there's a good story here. And, there's also some comparisons to like, Fantastic Four, which I think Fantastic Four was a inspiration for The Incredibles, so that makes sense. The problem that I really have with this movie, why it's not in the A tier, is because I'm not the biggest fan of Syndrome. Now, I like the Syndrome. Now, I think, he's a pretty threatening character, but his whole plot doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because he wants to make everyone a superhero, but instead he wants to pretend to be one and kill real superheroes. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then I kind of feel like the whole ending was kind of weird. To where he attempts to steal Jack from them. 15 months passed, or 12 months passed, or how many months, I don't know. And then basically I want to say Tommy, Billy, Dash wins a race, and then they're now forced to go back into action. And I'm thinking, like, so I thought you weren't allowed to do that anymore. Like, and they had this whole plot line about superheroes being illegal. And they only talked about it twice in the movie. One, at the beginning, until it hits 15 years later, and then right when they're about to get home, where they see Syndrome as Jack. But it's like, and I like how the second one establishes it, where it's all about that, and it incorporates the family. It incorporates the family in that some way. But, I don't know. I think there are some incredible things in this movie, but I can't give it that high remark. Maybe in 14 years I can like it more, but we'll see. Then we have Cars. Cars is an enjoyable movie. I like some of the songs in here, like Life is a Highway, I wanna ride it all night long. So yeah, Cars is good. I like some of the, okay. I'm sorry, hang on. My bad. I don't know what that was. All the characters are pretty fun. It's like, it was a nice introduction to this world. It's like, when I remember I watched this back in 2020, prepared for Soul, and I was thinking, like, Cars is so boring, I'm not gonna like this. And, it's not the worst thing ever. It's definitely not my favorite Pixar movie, but it's pretty entertaining. Like, it is entertaining. So, I'll give it its prompts for that, but I can't put it on the same tier as A Bug's Life, but what I will do is I'll put it in D. It's not bad, but it's not my favorite, and I don't want to put it in the same tier as A Bug's Life. We then have Ratatouille, which honestly, this movie kind of gets better on rewatch, where every single time I rewatch it, it just gets better and better. To whether it's the characters, the story, and how creative it goes, and it's so crazy because the concept is so funny and hilarious, but then once you watch the movie, it's like so cinematic, to where it's like this movie made a plot so that is so funny, but it kind of reminded me of Kung Fu Panda in a way, to where they took a premise about a panda doing kung fu and made it such a simple and like serious storyline. And they did the same thing with this too, where a rat really wants to cook. They really told a great story about that, and then basically about a rat accomplishing his dreams. It may not be the way he wanted it to, but he still got it. And I really liked that about the film, so I'm putting this one in the A tier. This has become one of my favorite Pixar movies the last few years. We then have WALL-E. WALL-E is a movie that I find completely boring. WALL-E and Evi are fun characters to watch on the screen, but I don't get much entertainment by this film. I find it tedious. Well, not find it tedious, but like, I don't know. I think there was an interesting idea that this film had to where basically it's like, what if you had a robot that was, many years into the future when Earth is dead? And to be honest, I don't really know. This movie was just kind of weird, and honestly, I have no interest in going back to rewatch it. It's not the worst thing. Like I said, Evi and WALL-E are still cute, but nothing else to that. So I'll put this in D. We then have Up. Up is a movie that it's very emotional. Like, I've talked about Michael Giacchino's score on this movie from, The Incredibles. I don't know if he did the score for Cars, but he probably did. And then this one he also did the score for. And this is probably his most iconic score. Because everybody that saw this movie knows the score for the film. Boom, dun, 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 dun. The score is iconic, but it probably has the saddest 10 minutes in any movie ever. About this couple who fall in love so young in their life. They have such a great life. And they have this plan about going to Gravity Falls. Or not Gravity Falls, that's a show. Paradise Falls. And before they can ever make that happen, the wife dies. And the man has to completely live alone. And then he is basically having a paper sent to him to get taken to Shady Oaks, to a retirement home. And it's just an emotional story to where it's like something like this can happen in real life. And I feel like watching any version of that is pretty sad. Honestly, Pixar movies are just meant to make you sad in so many ways. But in the same way, I think, and we'll talk about this. Actually, I'll save this conversation when we get to Toy Story 3. But Up, it's going to go in the B tier. I can't put it in the A tier, though, just because the first 10 minutes, when you watch the rest of the movie, it doesn't quite live up to the rest of the movie. Now, the rest of the movie is very entertaining. It's very fun. It's very funny. And it's so crazy how you're literally crying your eyes out and you're smiling and you're feeling all these different emotions. And then you're laughing your heart out from this movie. And it's great. Charles Munt's story was pretty dark. And I don't know. So some of the rest of the movie kind of bogs it down, but the whole film is still a great movie overall. And then now we have Toy Story 3, and this is the film I want to talk about where I feel like, so I believe this is like the first time where Pixar actually had two great films back to back. At least that's what I think. That were pretty much top tier. No, it wasn't. So, never mind. But with Up and Toy Story, I think that these are the best examples of why Pixar is so different. How Pixar is so different from Disney movies, because with Disney movies, they still somewhat tell, relatable stories, but what Disney does that I think does incredibly well, but if I'm being honest, I kind of watch it and I'm like, it's kind of cliche, and the way it happens is basically Disney shows us that anything can happen as long as you put your mind to it, as long as you wish hard. Pixar kind of does that reality showing thing in a way to where it's like, Ratatouille, Remy, he wanted to cook in Gusteau's in Gusteau's restaurant, but he couldn't do that because it got closed down because of the rat infestation. So he made his own restaurant, Toy Story. And in some ways, in the first 6 films of Pixar, it kind of felt like they're coming off from the Disney brand. But Up and Toy Story felt like those films that, like, we couldn't really get to Gravity Falls, but we're still there. Toy Story 3 was that film where we can't stay with Andy, but we have a better opportunity to, and it's almost like you can't really reach your dream job, but we have an alternative that will probably be much better for you. This may not be the best option. The attic may not be the best option, but we got a better opportunity for you to go live with Bonnie. But anyway, I just wanted to reference that note. But Toy Story 3, it's an A film. Once again, this is another top tier film from Pixar. I will say it's kind of bogged down to my second favorite Pixar Toy Story movie because I feel like that the movie feels so finale that, like, it doesn't feel like we're able to just have fun with all the crew and gang and stuff. That's why Toy Story 2 for me works so well, because they were able to make it work so fluently to where, yeah, we're trying to look for Woody the entire movie, but this one, it's like we have to stick together and stuff. And I think it's a cool storyline, but at the same time, it's like I loved how it felt. It was so dark, and like there were all these threats of like these characters probably have a risk of dying. And as fun as it is, as kiddie as it is, it really like goes in deep emotions. You thought Up was emotional. This is another masterpiece, at least for now. But all the characters. Lotso is an intimidating villain, and I love the idea of taking a daycare where I don't really know much about daycares, but this one kind of showed me if I ever have a kid, probably not taking them to a daycare. Or if my wife ever wants to donate my kids' toys to a daycare, I'm not sending them there. But because you never know what kind of people there could be. But all the character work was really nice. Bonnie is a cute character. She was very adorable. And at the same time, while the finale of it all felt weird, it also felt really great. It felt very finale. And I can understand the points where people are like, you don't, like, this, the franchise should have ended at 3. Which I kind of understand. But the other movies have been able to go even deeper. And I kind of like it. Alright, so now we get into Cars 2. And this is where the list kind of diverges because the 2010s was an odd era for Pixar. Like, they had some bangers, but most of them were kind of oddities. So, Cars 2, I'm going to put in the F tier, unfortunately. Now, you kind of think of the premise, like, of a spy Cars movie, that's basically what Fast and Furious was, which they also released the Fast and Furious movie the same year as Cars 2, but what made this film so bad wasn't just the storyline of changing Cars 2 from a racing movie to a spy espionage film. They made Mater the main character, and he does not work. He's not funny. He's like eating pistachio. He thought he was eating pistachio ice cream, and it's so weird. Hang on. And yeah, this movie, while there were definitely some fun action and some cool visuals, not my favorite Pixar movie. We then have Brave, which is sort of on the same story here. I really enjoy this movie. I like the music, I like some of the characters, but much like Cars 2, the movie has humor that is just not targeted for me. It's really weird in the way it does humor. And the story here, I think, was very complicated to where it's like, it had potential to be a really good Pixar movie. And the way it explains its lore, and the fact that this guy turned into a bear, it's like, it had some uniqueness to it, but I'll have to put this in F, unfortunately. Still really enjoy it, but not my favorite. Monsters University. So going into this movie, I was kind of thinking, so this is the sequel, but then I'm like, wait, if this is the sequel, then why are Randall and Mike friends? And then this was, I guess, the film where I realized, oh yeah, this is how prequels work. Okay, that makes sense. And as a prequel, it works pretty fun. It's a college movie, and I think that, to me, that works really well. But also, it takes a very interesting premise to where Mike originally wanted to be a scarer. And you kind of see in this movie where that didn't really work out for him. So, him and Sully decided to go work at Monsters, Inc. And I really like that storyline. So, I'm going to put this one in C. It's a pretty good film. Then we have Inside Out. So, I've talked about Up and Toy Story 3 being some of the Pixar's most emotional films. I think Inside Out is probably Pixar's most emotional film. Now, granted, the stuff that happens in this movie, I've never exactly been through. Like, I've been through a move, but I've never ran away. I've never ran away from home. I've never done any of that. Mainly because if I ran away from home, I wouldn't know what to do. So, there's no option in doing that. But with Inside Out, I love this world. I loved all these characters. I love the score from Michael Giacchino. Like, bound down, 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 but also just the entire story of how they handled an emotion story, I thought was just really interesting and clever for this studio, to where basically it's like, you have the character Joy, and while she was the first emotion that popped in Riley's head, you kind of realize that, like, there's a reason why these other emotions exist. If you were just happy all the time, you're not human. You're like a robot, basically. Now, even as a human being myself, even though I know it's normal to feel mad, feel sad, feel angry, feel fear, feel disgusted, I hate feeling those feelings. I wish I could actually feel happy all the time. I'm currently on my last week of summer, and I'm going to school next week, which is honestly insane, and I'm kind of going through it a little bit, but I am pushing through, and and when Joy realizes that, sadness is actually important. If you don't let your emotions out, you're probably going to run away, and do something you're going to regret. And I just love the way they tackled that storyline. And it's like, this was Pixar ahead of its time. Pixar was ahead of its time when they made this movie. This was just so peak. And yeah, this was just a masterful film. I love Inside Out. So easily A tier film. We then have The Good Dinosaur, and this is one I kind of grew up with. I remember I watched this with my family, and I can acknowledge its flaws. I don't think this is an F film. It's not the worst film in the studio, but it's not terrible either. Put this one in D. The animation is pretty beautiful, and I do think it's a little bit relatable about, getting over your fear and stuff like that. And Arlo was a pretty fun character. Not The Good Dinosaur. Finding Dory. Now, Finding Dory is actually possibly one of the most, entertaining movies on this entire list. Precisely because this is, my go-to, escape movie. Because I remember back in 2020 when I was starting 7th grade, this would be a movie I would just naturally pop on Disney Plus, and it would just escape my worries. And I don't know what it is. I love the Finding Nemo movies. And Finding Dory, obviously, it's a sequel where a side character is the main character, And obviously that shouldn't really work. But Dory is actually makes it work as a lead character. And I really enjoyed that. And all the new characters with Hank and Destiny and Bailey. That's his name, right? Yeah, Bailey, yeah. And the movie is just very funny, but it also kind of has an emotional story with, like, her forgetting stuff. So it's, like, it makes you kind of laugh at it, but also kind of emotional. So it almost kind of confuses you in a way to where it's like, am I supposed to laugh at this, or is this a sad thing? Like, and so it did pretty well. So I'm going to put this in C, not B, because those are more for films that I find great. And it's not exactly a great movie. It's just very entertaining for me. Just to where would I put it, though? I'll put it at the bottom of C. I would put it at the top of C, but I think A Bug's Life tells a better story, and so does Monsters University. And Finding Dory is good, though, but it's more on entertaining values. We then have Cars 3, and yeah, I think this movie is fine. I think, everybody compared it to Rocky 3. It's an interesting comparison there. But at the same time, I can understand. So I'll put this here. The Cruz Ramirez character was pretty fun. She was good. And then of course just the whole scene with Lightning McQueen crashing and stuff, that was like terrifying, I won't lie. And pretty serious. Coco, another just heart-wrenching movie. Honestly, I don't get emotional as much when I watch it, but I will say the movie is another masterclass in what Pixar is able to do, to where they were telling a story about the land of the living and the Day of the Dead, and honestly, the way that they made this film come to life was something so masterful from Pixar, to where immediately it became a classic. And I'm so proud of Coco. And honestly, it's like, I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to watch this movie. It looks cool, but I don't think I'm going to watch it. Then I saw a clip at school. I saw, like, the movie at school. And I'm like, I kind of was getting invested. And then I'm like, oh, so this movie really works, like, a lot. So, and then also, just Michael Giacchino's score is really great. And all the emotions and the characters. The whole entire movie is just so rewatchable. It's fun. It's entertaining. The score is beautiful. The world is beautiful. And overall, the movie is just very, very good. Alright, now we have Incredibles 2. So, obviously, you guys know that I am a big, big fan of Incredibles 2. Love this movie. And I think it is quite better than the first film. Now, I'm struggling to know where to put this movie because... And I think that's also the reason why I am doing the tier list now. Because I don't know where to put this movie. On the positives that I think this movie does is that it actually focuses on the premise. Superheroes are illegal. How are we going to fix that? And basically, it reminded me a little bit of Civil War in a way, to where they tell this whole storyline of the Avengers can no longer fight anywhere they want. In order for them to do that, they have to fight unless the government wants them to fight. And basically, it's like they have them all under the government's control. Hang on, I gotta get a drink of water. And with this film, you have Elastigirl as the lead, which she works really well, and you get like a different approach from her. But also, there was something so impactful about that, to where, and I like the way they just explore that story, to where basically this movie, it like explores what is the reason superheroes were put underground, because of perception. And every time there's a battle, the world shows them what they want to see. They see the destruction and they see the superheroes. But they want to find a new way to change people's perceptions about superheroes, to where the superheroes can change their can use their perceptions with can share their perceptions with the world by showing the cameras of proof that they are actually saving people and saving lives. And for me, I think that is a very interesting story. Now, the plotline of Screenslaver, I think, is a little bit different. It's kind of interesting, to where she wants, if superheroes stayed illegal, it's a little bit hard to understand, but at the same time, I kind of get it. I don't know. I don't know. Like, maybe I feel like I'm maybe forcing myself to like it, but at the same time, I feel like it was just a random villain. They tried to make sense of it, but I don't really know. But also when it comes to the other superheroes, I really like them and seeing them. But also when it comes to the action, it's really vibrant and colorful. The animation really pops in here. And then also just the stuff they do with the other characters in the family, where Bob is just trying to be a stay-at-home dad and all that stuff. It really works well. And then every scene with Jack is just hilarious. Honestly, this movie is just so much fun. I want to put it in the A tier, but honestly, I feel like the villain brings it down a little bit for me. But what I can say is I'm very excited for Incredibles 3. Even though Brad Bird isn't directing it, I don't care. I'm still very excited for it. And then we have Toy Story 4, which Toy Story 4 is a very great movie. I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, I'm excited because I just want to see Andy and Bonnie's toys interact more. But obviously there's a little bit more to that, and that it first off found an interesting way to continue the franchise, to do something very emotional with it, have beautiful animation in this one. And it's honestly crazy that a movie that everybody was not hoping for actually ended up really liking. And, like, the story they came up with, it was just so gut-wrenching. And it's like, the fact that they were able to go so hard with the story of Bo Peep and Woody was really great. But also, it makes you kind of emotional because you realize Toy Story 3 was the film that was their end time with Andy, and now this is their time left with Woody, and Woody gets to go on, be with Bo Peep, and be a lost toy. There's something so emotional about that. But at the same time, while the movie is pretty emotional, all the characters are all funny. The new characters, Ducky and Bunny. This version of Bo Peep in here was really good, and I like the way they explored the story of lost toys. And basically, toys that have no owners, toys that are free. But you also get this character of Gabby, who basically had this plan to get chosen by a child, but they didn't want them in the first place. And it's kind of sad. But at the same time, it's kind of like our destinies are written out in different ways. So it's like, I don't know. It had an emotional twist on it. So I'm going to put this one in the B tier. And I will say the reason it's going low is because there are some issues with it still. I don't like the way they don't include as much of the original characters. Buzz seems very stupid at times in this one, and if I'm gonna be honest, like, this was a big downgrade. He had some fun moments, but he was just kind of stupid. And then also, it probably is weird that they didn't use many of the characters, especially like Mr. Potato Head, who passed away like 2 years before this movie came out. So that was heartbreaking, but he got at least a line in. But yeah, so this movie's still great. It doesn't impact the movie as a whole, but it's still really good. We then have Onward, and I really enjoyed this movie. It was a solid Pixar movie, the first Pixar movie to come out in the 2020s. It's still a very fun movie. Tom Holland and Chris Pratt work really well together, and it was a fun COVID movie. Very fun COVID movie. And adding in this fantasy world and stuff like that, it was just very entertaining. So I'll put this one in the C category, right there. We then have Soul. Soul is great. I can understand that it kinda is another Pixar movie that basically rehashes a story template that's been used many times before. But what this film did so incredibly well is the way that it's able to incorporate the story of life and what life is really all about. That it's not about, reaching your destiny. Life is all about living your life to the fullest, and, just having a good life. And this movie accomplished it really well. The animation was beautiful. The characters were all funny. The movie was really funny, too. And all the jokes were really good, too. I will say the Soul world is not as entertaining or interesting like the Inside Out world, like the brain, basically. So that's kind of what bogs it down for me. And obviously the story template is a little bit predictable. But honestly, I can put this as, like, one of my favorite Pixar movies the last few years. So this was pretty great. Then we have Luca. Luca was a pretty enjoyable Pixar movie. I did enjoy it a good bit. It's honestly, it kind of reminds me a little bit of my relationship with my mom and me, to where it's like, she doesn't want me to do things and stuff, but at the same time, it's a pretty good story. It has some good, characters. The animation, I'm debating whether I like it or not, because I kind of prefer, the other type of animation, the way they created characters. But besides that, this movie was pretty good. I'll put this in C. We then have Turning Red, which I don't really care about as much. I'm a little bit more negative on it. I like the animation style, and I think this movie was trying to do something clever, but I don't think they had the range of going there. Granted, Pixar can do pretty mature stuff, but this kind of immaturity was kind of weird. But I think that's just me, to be honest. Then we have Lightyear. And, this is actually one of the worst Pixar films ever made. Unfortunately. And it could just be me, but, of course, I think Chris Evans works as the character of Buzz Lightyear. I think the score is pretty great. The animation's pretty good. And Socks is a pretty great character. I will say, he's a great character. But I don't think this movie works all that much. All the characters in the movie, this was my introduction to Keke Palmer. I believe so. And this was just not a good movie. I remember, and I was like, it also counts to be my worst movie theater experience, to where I went to the movie, my dad fell asleep, mainly because he always does that in movies, but also, whenever a blaster went off in the theater wasn't loud, and I thought, I want to feel like I'm in a space action adventure film. And it didn't make me feel like that at all. Like, I wanted this to feel like Star Wars in a way. And they really failed at that. So, yeah, I'm putting this one in the F, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Now, it makes me kind of want to rave a little bit, but I think I'm going to keep it where it is. But yeah, I think Lightyear is probably my least favorite Pixar movie. And then also the Zurg reveal was just terrible. We have Elemental, and this is a Pixar movie that I actually remember watching, and I was like, I was very excited going into it, but then I kept hearing all these mixed reviews, and people saying, people hated it, and then, it didn't really have much money going in the box office the first few weeks, and then the last few weeks, it actually was doing really well. But the end result actually revolves in a pretty great Pixar movie. To where I'm just watching this and I'm like, this just is such a great idea. To where you kind of combine Inside Out, but also Zootopia. And you basically make an immigrant story with the elements of the earth. And I think that is just such a fascinating story. To where, in my opinion, it's one of Pixar's best movies in years. To where, like, it was so crazy of how good they were able to make this movie. And, like, from the animation is quite beautiful with the fire and the water. The characters were all very likable and charming. The story, the world was very interesting. It was also kind of funny at times. And honestly, it's a movie that I, like, much like A Bug's Life, I kind of go back and watch sometimes, or whenever it's on TV, because it's very good. And, like, I get it, it may not be for everyone, but I personally loved this movie. And I love the immigrant story, and it's like, all the ideas you ever thought about in your head, it exactly happened the way it did. So, it's honestly a movie that gets better on rewatch for me. We then have Inside Out 2, and yeah, this was a successful achievement from Pixar. That, in my opinion, this was actually Pixar's best movie in years. Superficially speaking, what this movie was able to accomplish was probably the best thing that a Pixar movie could possibly do. A Pixar sequel that I think they could possibly do best. To where this felt like the first Inside Out, but it felt a lot like a Toy Story sequel. Like Toy Story 2 in a way. To where I'm like, this was just so good. To where I'm just sitting here and I'm like, everything's working out. It's funny. It's emotional. And while it may not, the way they handled it may not impact as much like the first film did, because I think the first film, it made such a huge impact. This one didn't quite as much. It's still pretty emotional, and it's still, like, special, because it's kind of relatable to how us kids are feeling. To where we're suffering with a lot of stress and anxiety throughout our school years, and, having separation anxiety and stuff like that. And if I'm going to be honest, if any teenager says they don't experience this shit, and experience anxiety attacks, that's just crazy. Like, bro, I get it. You're living life, but, like, you are, like, I was talking about with a friend, like, it's not that deep. Like, what are you talking about? Of course it is. Every kid deals with this. Like, every person is going to deal with this sort of thing. And then at the same time, I like the new characters they introduced in here with the other new emotions. And I also liked the way they did anxiety. And overall, it was just a fantastic movie. Great score, great characters, great animation, great story. Overall, just a beautiful film, and I loved watching every second of it. So I'm gonna put this one in the A tier. We then have Elio, and I think Elio was fine. It was a fine Pixar movie. To be honest, I didn't really know what to expect going into this one, because the marketing was just terrible for this movie. But what I can say is that it was a pretty fun, entertaining movie. The animation was quite stunning, and some of the characters were pretty fun. But that's all I can really say for that. And I hope next year we get some pretty good Pixar films, because we're getting Hoppers and Toy Story 5. So I'm going to put this one in the D tier. But that's pretty much it. that's my list for all the Pixar movies. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.